Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, accompanied by the Mosaic Ensemble. And it seems appropriate today of all days that we take a minute on December 7th, 2018 to acknowledge the greatest generation. Would you not agree? Okay, now, let the program begin.
Marley's ghost.
Marley was dead to begin with. He was dead as a doornail. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I'm about to relate. Scrooge. Scrooge was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone. A squeezing, wrenching, grasping, clutching, covetous old sinner. Secret and self-contained, he liked to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all humanity to keep its distance.
God rest ye.
Once upon a time, of all the good days of the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, biting weather. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open, that he might keep an eye upon his clerk, Bob Cratchit, who in an adjoining dismal little cell was working his ledgers. "A Merry Christmas, Uncle, and God bless you." It was Scrooge's nephew. "Bah! Humbug!" "Christmas a humbug, Uncle," said Scrooge's nephew. "Humbug! You don't mean that, I'm sure." "Out upon Merry Christmas! If I could work my will with every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips, they should be boiled in their own pudding and buried with a stake of holly through their heart. They should. Uncle, nephew, you keep Christmas in your way and I'll keep it in mine." "Keep it, but you don't keep it." "Let me leave it alone then," Scrooge's nephew replied. "Christmas time is a good time, a kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, and I say, God bless it." Bob Cratchit involuntarily applauded. "Very good, sir. God bless Christmas." "Cratchit, let me hear another song from you and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation." "Nephew, you're quite a powerful speaker. I wonder you don't go into Parliament." "Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow." "I'll see you in hell first." Scrooge's nephew cried, "But why? Why?" "Good afternoon. I'll keep my Christmas humor to the last. So, a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon. And a Happy New Year. Good afternoon. And a Merry Christmas to you, Bob Cratchit, and the Missus, and Tiny Tim." The clerk answered, "A Merry Christmas to you, sir."
God rest ye, merry gentlemen.
God bless it.
Nothing you disturb.
"There's another lunatic," muttered Scrooge. This lunatic, Bob Cratchit, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, let two other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, and now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands and bowed to him. "Scrooge and Marley's, I believe," said one gentleman, referring to his list. "Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?" "Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years. He died 7 years ago, this very night." "Oh. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, "it is more than usually desirable that we should make some provision for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at the present time." "Are there no prisons? And the workhouses, are they still in operation?" "They are still," returned the gentleman. "I wish I could say that they were not. What shall we put you down for?" "Nothing." "You wish to be anonymous?" "I wish to be left alone since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen. That is my answer. I don't make merry myself at Christmas and can't afford to make other people merry. I help to support the establishments I've mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there." "Many can't go there, and many would rather die." If they would rather die, they'd better do it and decrease the surplus population. Good afternoon.
God rest
Good
ye
afternoon,
merry
Mr. Scrooge,
gentlemen,
and Merry Christmas to you. Meanwhile, the fog and darkness thicken so, foggier yet and colder, piercing, searching, biting cold. The owner of one scant young nose stooped down at Scrooge's keyhole to regale him with a Christmas carol.
God rest ye merry gentlemen.
Scrooge seized the ruler with such energy of action that the singer fled in terror, leaving the keyhole to the fog and even more congenial frost.
God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Remember Christ our Savior was born on Christmas Day, to save us all from Satan's power when we were gone astray. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy. In Bethlehem in Israel, this blessed babe was born, and laid within a manger upon this blessed board, to which his mother Mary did nothing take in scorn. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy.
At length, the hour of shutting up the counting house arrived. With an ill will, Scrooge dismounted his stool and tacitly admitted the fact to his expectant clerk, who instantly snuffed his candle out and put on his hat. "You'll want all day tomorrow, I suppose?" "If quite convenient, sir." "It's not convenient, and it's not fair. If I was to stop a half a crown for it, you'd think yourself ill-used?" "Yes, sir." "And yet," said Scrooge, "you don't think me ill-used when I pay a day's wages for no work." "It's only once a year, sir." "A poor excuse for picking a man's pocket every 25th of December," said Scrooge, buttoning his great coat up to the chin. "But I suppose you must have the whole day. Be here all the earlier next morning." "Merry Christmas, Mr. Scrooge." "Bah!" The office was closed in a twinkling, and the clerk, with the long ends of his white scarf dangling before him, for he boasted no greatcoat, went on his way. Scrooge took his melancholy dinner in his usual melancholy tavern, and having read all the newspapers and beguiled the rest of the evening with his account books, went home to bed. He lived in chambers which once belonged to his partner. The yard to the house was so dark that even Scrooge, who knew its every stone, was fain to grope with his hands. And then, let any man explain to me, if he can, how it happened that Scrooge, having his key in the lock of the door, saw in the knocker, without its undergoing any intermediate process of change, not a knocker, but Marley's face! It had a dismal light about it, like a bad lobster in a dark cellar. It was not angry or ferocious, but looked at Scrooge as Marley used to look. Its hair was curiously stirred. Though the eyes were wide open, they were perfectly motionless. He did pause moment's irresolution before he shut the door. From every room above and every cask in the wine merchant's cellar below, there appeared to be a separate peal of echoes all of its own. Scrooge was not a man to be frightened by echoes. He fastened the door and walked across the hall. Darkness is cheap, and Scrooge liked it. But before he shut the heavy door to his bedroom and walked through his rooms to see that all was right, he checked the rooms: sitting room, bedroom. All as they should be. Nobody under the table. Nobody under the sofa. Nobody under the bed. Nobody in the closet. Nobody in his dressing gown, which was hanging up in a suspicious attitude against the wall. Quite satisfied, he closed the door and locked himself in, double-locked himself in, which was not his custom. Thus secured against surprise, he took off his cravat, put on his dressing gown and slippers, and his nightcap, and sat down before the fire to take his gruel. His glance happened to rest upon an unused bell that hung in the room, and with a strange, inexplicable dread, that as he looked, the bell began to swing. It swung so softly in the outset that it scarcely made a sound. But soon it rang out loudly, and so did every bell in the house. They were succeeded by a clanking noise, deep down below, as if some person were dragging a heavy chain over the casks in the wine merchant's cellar. A ghost! I know him! Marley's ghost! The same face, the very same. The chain he drew was clasped about his middle. It was long and wound about him like a tail of cash boxes, keys, padlocks, ledgers, deeds, and heavy purses wrought in steel. His body was transparent, so that Scrooge, observing him and looking through his waistcoat, could see the two buttons on the coat behind. "How now?" said Scrooge, caustic and cold as ever. "What do you want with me?" "Much!" Marley's voice, no doubt about it. "Who are you?" "Ask me who I was." "Who were you then? You're particular for a shade." "In life I was your partner, Jacob Marley. You don't believe in me. Why do you doubt your senses?" "Because you may be an undigested bit of beef, a spot of mustard, a crumb of cheese, a fragment of an underdone potato." Scrooge fell upon his knees and clasped his hands before his face. "In life, my spirit never roamed beyond the narrow limits of our money-changing world. I am doomed to wander through the world to find my fellow man, and weary journeys lie before me." 7 years dead and traveling all that time? You might have gotten over a great quantity of ground in 7 years. Know that no space of regret can make amends for one life's opportunities misused. Yet such was I, and such are you. But you were always a good man of business, Jacob. Business! Mankind was my business! The common welfare was my business! Charity, mercy, forbearance, benevolence! Don't be flowery, Jacob, pray. I am here tonight to warn you. You have yet a chance and hope of escaping my fate. A chance and hope of my procuring Ebenezer. You will be visited by 3 ghosts. I think I'd rather not. Without their visits, you cannot hope to shun the path I tread. Expect the first tomorrow when the bell tolls 1. Couldn't I take them all at once and have it over with, Ebenezer, Jacob? Expect the second on the second night at the same hour. The third upon the next night when the last stroke of 12 has ceased to vibrate. Look to see me no more, and look that for your own sake, remember what has passed between us. The apparition walked backward from him, and at every step it took, the window raised itself a little, so that when the specter reached it, it was wide open. Scrooge followed to the window, just desperate in his curiosity. He looked out. The air was filled with phantoms. Soon they, in their spirit voices, faded altogether, and night became as it had been when he walked home. Scrooge went straight to bed without undressing, and fell asleep upon the instant.
Stave 2, the first of the 3 spirits.
Scrooge awoke, listening for the hour. He remembered on a sudden that the ghost warned him of a visitation when the bell tolled 1. A light flashed up in the room upon an instant, and the curtains of his bed were drawn. Ah! Scrooge found himself face to face with the unearthly visitor who drew them, as close to it as I am now to you. It was a strange figure, like a child, yet not so like a child as like an old man, but diminished to a child's proportions. Its hair, which hung about its neck and down its back, was white as if with age, and yet the face had not a wrinkle in it. It was brilliant and transparent, like the flame of a candle. Are you the spirit, sir, whose coming was foretold to me? I am the ghost of Christmas past. Long past? No, your past. Rise and walk with me, Ebenezer. Would it be vain for me to plead that I am clad lightly in slippers, dressing gown, and nightcap, and have cold about me? I am mortal spirit and liable to fall. Bear but a touch of my hand here, and you shall be upheld in more than this. As the words were spoken, they passed through the wall and stood upon an open country road with fields on either hand. The city had entirely vanished, for it was a clear, cold winter day with snow upon the ground. Good heaven, said Scrooge, clasping his hands together and looking about him. I was bred in this place. I was a boy here. They walked along the road, Scrooge recognizing every gate and post and tree, until a little market town appeared in the distance, with its bridge, its church, its winding river. Some boys called to other boys in country gigs and carts and horses driven by farmers. All these boys were in great spirits and shouted to each other until the broad fields were so full of merry music that the crisp air laughed to hear it.
Here we come, a caroling among the leaves so green. Here we come, a wandering so fair to be seen. Love and joy come to you, and to you like Christmas too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year. We are not daily beggars that beg from door to door, but we are neighbors' children whom you have seen before. Love and joy come to you, and to you like Christmas too. And God bless you and send you a happy new year. And God send you a happy new year.
The ghost said, now standing inside the schoolroom. But the school is not yet quite deserted. There was a chilly barrenness in the place, which associated itself with too much getting up by candlelight and not too much to eat. A solitary child, neglected by his friends, is left there still. Scrooge muttered, I know it. I am that solitary child I see before me. I wish, but it's too late now. What is the matter? Nothing, nothing. There was a boy singing a Christmas carol at my door last night. I should like to have given him something, that's all. The ghost smiled thoughtfully, waving its hand as it did so. Let us see another Christmas. There Scrooge was again, a young man. He was alone again, when all the other boys had gone home for the jolly holidays. Scrooge was not reading now, but walking up and down, despairingly, glancing anxiously towards the door. It opened, and a little girl, much younger than the boy, young Scrooge, came in, darting in, and putting her arms about his neck and often kissing him, addressed him as,
Dear brother, I've come to take you home, dear brother.
said the child, clapping her tiny hands.
To bring you home, home.
Home, little Fan?
Yes, home for good and all, home forever and ever. Father is so much kinder than he used to be, and home is like heaven. Father sent me in a coach to bring you, and we're never to come back here again. But first, we are to have the merriest time in all the world.
You are quite a woman, little Fan. She clapped her hands and laughed and tried to touch his head, but being too little, laughed again and stood on tiptoe to embrace him. Then she began to drag him in her childish eagerness towards the door, and he accompanied her. Always a delicate creature, whom a breath might have withered, but she had a large heart. She died a woman, and had one child, your nephew. Yes, my nephew. They left the school behind them, and were now in the busy thoroughfares of the city. It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here, too, it was Christmas time again. But it was evening, and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped at a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. Know it! I was apprenticed here. They went in at the sight of an old gentleman in a Welsh wig sitting behind such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling. Scrooge cried, "Why, it's old Fezziwig! Bless his heart, it's Fezziwig, alive again!" Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked up at the clock, which pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, laughed all over himself, and called out, "Yo-ho, my boys! No work tonight! Christmas Eve, Dick! Christmas, Ebenezer! Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson!" There were dances, there were forfeits, and more dances, and there was cake, and there was a great piece of cold roast. There were mince pies, and plenty of beer. Then old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig, top couple, too. But if there had been twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them, and so would Mrs. Fezziwig. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations on either side of the door, shaking hands with every person individually as he or she went out, wishing him or her a Merry Christmas. The ghost said, studying Scrooge for a sign of change in him. Small matter to make these folks so full of gratitude. Small? Why, is it not? He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. Is that so much that he deserves this praise? It isn't that, said Scrooge. It isn't that, Spirit. He has the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service a burdensome or a pleasure or a toil. Say that his power lies in words and looks, in things so slight and insignificant that it's impossible to add and count him up. What then? the happiness he gives is quite as great as if it cost a fortune. The ghost stood, patiently observing him. What is the matter? Nothing particular. Something, I think. No. I should like to be able to say a word to my clerk just now. That's all. Spirits, show me no more. Conduct me home. Why do you delight to torture me? Leave me, take me back, haunt me no longer. My time grows short. Quick. The ghost, brilliant but insubstantial as a candle flame, wavered. Then suddenly, as if caught in a draft, it sputtered sideways and then was blown out. A narrow tendril of smoke was all that remained. Awakening, Scrooge saw a blaze of ruddy light streaming through the cracks of the adjoining room. He got up softly and shuffled in his slippers to the door. The moment Scrooge's hand was on his lock, a strange voice called him by his name, and bade him enter. He obeyed. It was his own room. There was no doubt about that, but it had undergone a surprising transformation. The walls and ceiling were so hung with living green that it looked a perfect grove, from every part of which bright, gleaming berries glistened. In easy state upon a couch there sat a jolly giant, glorious to see, who bore a glowing torch in shape not unlike Plenty's horn, and held it up, high up, to shed its light on Scrooge as he came peeping round the door. Come in, and know me better, man. Scrooge did so, timidly. I am the ghost of Christmas present. Look upon me. Scrooge reverently did so. The ghost was clothed in one simple green robe bordered with white fur. This garment hung so loosely on the figure that its chest was bare. Its head wore no other covering than a holly wreath, set here and there with shining icicles. Its dark brown curls were long and free. The ghost of Christmas present rose. Will you come forth with me, Ebenezer Scrooge? Touch my robe. Scrooge did as he was told and held fast. Mistletoe, red berries, ivy, turkeys, punch, all the feast, all vanished instantly. So did the room, the fire, the ruddy glow. Their flight stopped at Bob Cratchit's poor four-room house. Then up rose Mrs. Cratchit, Cratchit's wife, dressed out but poorly in a twice-turned gown, but brave in ribbons, which are cheap and make a goodly show for sixpence. Her daughters also brave in ribbons. The feast was nearly ready. Goose was almost cooked.
What has ever got your precious father then?
Said Mrs. Cratchit.
And your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha? Warrant she is late last Christmas Day by half an hour.
Here's Martha, Mother.
Said Martha, appearing as she spoke.
Here's Martha, Mother.
Cried the two young Cratchits.
Hooray! Such a goose, Martha.
I bless your heart alive, my dear, how late you are.
Said Mrs. Cratchit, kissing Martha a dozen times and taking off her shawl and bonnet for her with officious zeal.
We'd a deal of work to finish up last night and had to clear away this morning, Mother.
Well, never mind, so long as you are come. Sit ye down by the fire, my dear, and have a warm, Lord bless you.
No, there's Father coming.
Cried the two young Cratchits, who were everywhere at once.
Hi, Martha, hi.
So Martha hid herself, and in came little Bob, the father, with at least 3 feet of scarf, exclusive of the fringe hanging down before him, and his threadbare clothes darned up and brushed to look seasonable. And Tiny Tim upon his shoulder. Alas for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. "Why, where's our Martha?" said Bob.
Not coming.
"Not coming? Not coming on Christmas Day?" Martha didn't like to see him disappointed if it were only a joke, so she came out prematurely from behind the closet door and ran into his arms.
I'm here, Father.
And how did little Tim behave?
Asked Mrs. Cratchit as she rallied Bob on his credulity, and Bob hugged his daughter to his heart's content. "As good as gold," said Bob, "and better. You know, he told me coming home that he hoped that people who saw him in church, because he was a cripple, that it might be pleasant for them to remember that on Christmas Day, he who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Martha, Tiny Tim, I believe, is growing strong and hearty." His active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back came in Tiny Tim before another word was spoken. Two ubiquitous young Cratchits went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession.
Here's the
Mind the gravy.
At last the dishes were set on, and the grace was said. Bob said, "I don't believe there ever was such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavor, size and cheapness were the themes of universal admiration. Eked out by applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for the whole family. This was followed by plum pudding, the climax of the feast. At last, dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. Then all the Cratchit family drew round the hearth.
is ready, Father.
announced Mrs. Cratchit and passed the glasses round. Bob toasted, "A Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us."
God bless us and keep us.
God bless us, everyone.
Said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat close to his father's side upon a little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he wished to keep him by his side, and dreaded that he might be taken from him. "Spirit, tell me if Tiny Tim will live." "I see a vacant seat in a poor chimney corner, and a crutch without an owner, carefully preserved. If these shadows remain unaltered by the future, this child will die." No, kind spirit. "Say that he will be spared. If these shadows remain unaltered, the future will not find him here." "What then? If he be like to die, he'd better do it and decrease the surplus population." Bob Cratchit said to the gathering family, "Mr. Scrooge, I give you Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast."
The founder of the feast, indeed.
Cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening.
I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I hope he'd have good appetite for it.
My dear, the children, Christmas Day.
It should be Christmas Day, I am sure, on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow.
My dear, Christmas Day.
I'll drink his health for your sake and the day's, not for his.
The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings which had no heartiness. Tiny Tim drank it last of all, but he didn't care twopence for it. Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party, which was not dispelled for full 5 minutes. By and by, Tiny Tim broke the spell with a little song.
There was a little child traveling in the snow. He lost his companion and didn't know where to go.
There was nothing of high mark in this little song, but to those gathered round, it echoed trumpets in heaven. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproofed. Their clothes were scanty, and they knew the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and content with the time. And now, without a word of warning from the ghost, they stood upon a bleak and desert moor, where monstrous masses of rude stone were cast about, as though it were the burial place of giants. "What place is this?" said Scrooge. "A place where miners live, who labor in the bowels of the earth. But they know me, see?"
Joy
light shone from the window of a hut, and swiftly they advanced towards it. Passing through the wall of mud and stone, they found a cheerful company assembled around a glowing fire. An old man, with his face all damaged and scarred with hard weather, as the figurehead of a ship might be, struck up a sturdy song that was like a gale in itself, and women and their children and their children's children and another generation beyond that, all decked out gaily in their holiday attire, wished each other Merry Christmas in their can of grog.
Hark the herald angels sing.
And then, as swiftly, they were transported again.
Glory to the newborn King.
Your Uncle Scrooge refused again, Fred?
Scrooge's nephew laughed. Ha! He said Christmas was a humbug as I live. He believed it too,
More's the shame for him, Fred.
said Scrooge's niece indignantly. He's a comical old fellow. That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. Scrooge's niece observed.
I have no patience for him.
So
Oh, I have. I'm sorry for him. I couldn't be angry with him if I tried. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself always. Here he takes it in himself to dislike us, and he won't dine with us. Scrooge's niece interrupted.
Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner.
I was only going to say that the consequences of Scrooge taking a dislike to us and not making merry with us is, I think, that he loses some very pleasant moments which would do him no harm. But the whole scene passed off in the breath of the last words spoken by his nephew, and Scrooge and the spirit were again upon their travels. Looking at the spirit as they stood together in an open space, Scrooge noticed that its hair was gray, its skin was mottled. Are spirits' lives so short? My life upon this globe is very brief, replied the ghost. It ends tonight. Tonight? Said Scrooge. Tonight at midnight. Hark, my time is drawing near. Forgive me if I'm not justified in what I ask, said Scrooge, looking intently at Spirit's robes. But I see something strange protruding from your skirts. Is it a foot or a claw? It was a child's foot, though there was little flesh upon it. From the folding of its robe, the Spirit brought forth two children, wretched, abject, frightful, hideous, miserable. They knelt down at its feet and clung upon the outside of its garment. Oh man, look here, look here. They were a boy and a girl. Scrooge started back, appalled. Spirit, are they yours? They are man's, and they cling to me, appealing from their fathers. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all, beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom. Unless the writing be erased. Have they no refuge or resource? Are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Are there no prisons? Are there the ghost, and saw it not. Lifting up his eyes, he beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded. Like a mist along the ground, it came towards him.
Stave 4, the last of the spirits.
The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the very air through which the spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. Am I in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come? Will you not speak to me? It gave no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them. Lead on, lead on. The night is waning fast, and it's precious time to me. I know. Lead on, spirit. The spirit stopped beside one little knot of businessmen. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk. No, I don't know much about it either way. I only know he's dead. When did he die? Last night, I believe. Why, what was the matter with him? I thought he'd never die. God knows. What has he done with his money? Haven't heard. Left it to his company, I suppose. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know. It's likely to be a very cheap funeral, for upon my life, I don't know of anybody to go to it. Suppose we make up a party and volunteer. I don't mind going if lunch is provided, but I must be fed if I make one. Speakers and listeners strolled away, mixing with other groups. Scrooge knew the men and looked towards the spirit for an explanation. Not another word. They left the busy scene and went to an obscure part of town where Scrooge had never penetrated before, although he recognized its bad repute. The whole quarter reeked with crime, with filth, and misery. Far in this quarter was a den of infamous resort. Upon the floor within were piled up heaps of refuse of all kinds. Sitting among the iron, rags, and refuse he dealt in was a gray-haired rascal, nearly 70 years of age, who smoked his pipe. He was known to the refuse dealers only as Joe. A scrawny old rag picker appeared, followed by a great woman with a substantial bundle on her back. An undertaker, dressed all in black, stood silently by. What have you to sell? What have you to sell? Demanded old Joe. While he did this, the great woman threw her bundle on the floor and sat down in a flaunting manner on a stool, crossing her elbows on her knees and looking with a bold defiance.
Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose. If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, he'd have had somebody to look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there, alone, by himself.
The scrawny woman added,
We know pretty well that we were helping ourselves before we met here, I believe. It's no sin. Open the bundle, Joe.
What do you call this? Bed curtains? Said Joe. You don't mean to say you took him down, rings and all, with him lying there dead? His blankets, too?
Whose else's do you think?
Replied the great woman.
He isn't likely to take cold without him, I dare say. You may look through through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one too. They'd have wasted it if it hadn't been for me.
What do you call a wasting of it?
Putting it on him to be buried in, to be sure. Somebody was fool enough to do it, but I took it off again.
Then old Joe produced a flannel bag with money in it and told out the woman several guineas upon the ground. This is the end of it, you see, the great woman added.
He frightened everyone away from him when he was alive, to profit us when he was dead.
If there is any person in this town who feels emotion caused by this man's death, show that person to me, Spirit, I beseech you. The ghost conducted him through several streets familiar to his feet. They entered poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children quietly seated round the fire. The youngest children sat like statues. Mrs. Cratchit and her daughters were engaged in sewing. Master Peter, the eldest, was reading, and he took a child and set him in the midst of them. What's the matter, Mother? Why have you stopped your needlework? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face.
The color hurts my eyes.
The color? Ah, poor Tiny Tim, said Peter.
The better, now again. It makes them weak by candlelight. And I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time.
Past it, rather, Peter answered, shutting up his book. But I think he has walked a little slower than he used these few last evenings, Mother.
I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder very fast indeed.
And so have I, often.
And so have I.
But Tiny Tim was very light to carry.
She resumed, intent upon her work.
And his father loved him so it was no trouble. No trouble. And there was your father at the door. You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear, returned Bob. I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how pleasant a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I would walk there upon a Sunday. My little child. My little child. Spectre, said Scrooge, something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. They reached an iron gate leading to a churchyard. Scrooge paused to look around him before entering. Here then, the wretched man whose name he was about to learn lay underneath the ground. Before I draw nearer to that stone to which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of the things that will be? Or are they shadows of the things that may be only? Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood. Scrooge crept towards it, trembling as he went, and followed the finger. He read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name, Ebenezer Scrooge. No, Spirit, no, oh no, no. The Spirit, the finger was still there. Spirit, hear me. I'm not the man I was. Why show me this if I am past all hope? For the first time, the hand appeared to shake. Good Spirit, your nature intercedes for me and pities me. Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life. The kind hand trembled again, I will honor Christmas in my heart. I will keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. I will not shut out the lessons that they teach. Oh, tell me that I may sponge away the writing on this stone. In his agony, he caught the spectral hand. It sought to free itself, but Scrooge was strong in his entreaty and detained it. The spirit, stronger yet, repulsed him. Suddenly, Scrooge saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost.
Stave 5, the end of it.
Yes, the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The bed curtains not torn on. And best and happiest of all the time before him was his own to make amends in. I'm here and I don't know what to do. I'm as light as a feather. I'm as happy as an angel. I'm as merry as a schoolboy, as giddy as a drunken man. I don't know what day of the month it is. I don't know how long I've been among the spirits. I don't know anything. I'm quite a baby. I don't mind. I don't care. I'd rather be a baby. Hello. Whoop, whoop. Hello here. The churches rang out. The lustiest peals he had ever heard. Oh, glorious, glorious.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come.
Running to the window, he opened it. What's today? Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy. What's today, my fine fellow?
Why, today, it's Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day and I haven't missed it? The spirits have done it all in one night. They can do anything they like. Of course they can. Of course they can. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poultry is in the next street but one at the corner?
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy, a very remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that's hanging there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one?
What, the one as big as me?
A delightful boy, pleasure to talk to him. Yes,
It's hanging there now.
it is. Go and buy it.
Oh, Walker!
No, I'm in earnest. Go and buy it and tell him to bring it here. Then I give him the direction of where to take it. Come back with a man and I'll give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes and I'll give you half a crown. I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sent it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. He went to church and walked about the streets and watched people hurrying to and fro and patted little children on the head and questioned beggars. He looked so irresistibly pleasant in a word that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said,
Good morning, sir.
A Merry Christmas to you.
Happy day to you.
Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare in room, and let the nature sing, and let the nature
stepped towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock. But he made a dash for it and did it. "Is your master home, my dear?" "Nice girl, very."
Yes, sir.
"Where is he, my love?"
He's in the dining room, sir, along with mistress. I'll show you upstairs, if you please.
"Thank ye. He knows me. I'll go in here, my dear." He turned the knob gently and sidled his face in around the door. They were looking at the table, which was spread out in great array. "Fred!" "Why, bless my soul," cried Fred. "Look, who's that?" "It is I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?" "Let him in." A mercy Fred didn't shrink Scrooge's arm off. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office next morning. Oh, he was early there. That, if he could only be there first, that was the thing he had set his mind upon. If he could catch Bob Cratchit coming in late. And he did it. Yes, he did. "Hello? What do you mean, coming here at this time of day?" "I'm very sorry, sir. I am behind my time." "You are, yes. I think you are. Step this way, if you please." "It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making rather merry yesterday, sir." "Now, I'll tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand for this sort of thing any longer. And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family. We will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy another coal scuttle before you doubt another eye, Bob Cratchit." Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing good ever happened on this globe for good in which some people did not have their fill of laughter at the outset. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed,
Come